Today on TimesCast, President Obama presents his deficit reduction plan, vowing to veto any plan that doesn't raise taxes on the rich.
This is not class warfare. It's math.
Violence in Yemen's capital continues into its second day, the worst since pro-democracy protests began in the spring. And world leaders convene in New York for the United Nations General Assembly.
We can't just cut our way out of this hole. It's going to take a balanced approach.
President Obama unveiled the details of his long-term deficit reduction package in the Rose Garden this morning. He's looking to save $3 trillion over 10 years through a mix of some spending cuts, but significant changes to the tax code, including allowing Bush-era tax cuts to expire and eliminating tax breaks and loopholes, particularly for higher-income people and corporations. He's portraying this as a simple question of math. You need to make these changes to the tax code in order to arrive at this larger number, and it sets up a showdown with Republicans in the House who've said they'll oppose anything that resembles a tax increase.
And I will veto any bill that changes benefits for those who rely on Medicare but does not raise serious revenues by asking the wealthiest Americans or biggest corporations to pay their fair share.
The Republicans have been quick to criticize the president's proposals. House Speaker John Boehner issued a statement very quickly after the president spoke, saying that pitting Americans against each other is never a good idea. Republicans have been quick to portray the president's plan as a form of class warfare, something he rejects. But we can see battle lines being set, and really it's a battle that's likely to carry all the way into the 2012 election, as President Obama presents one vision for the role of government in society and Republicans present a radically different one. He seems ready for this battle and less interested in compromise than he was during the summer, when he kept talking about hoping to reach a grand bargain with Republicans, a process that fell apart finally on the familiar issue of tax increases.
Government security forces in Yemen's capital killed 20 pro-democracy protesters Monday in a second day of violence.
This is Laura Kasanoff for the New York Times in Sana'a, Yemen. The Yemeni capital witnessed the worst violence that it's seen against protesters since March. The reason why there hasn't been a lot of violence against protesters in Sana'a for all of these months, while they have been on the streets, is because they only stayed within their sit-in area. But what happened on Sunday is that the protesters marched outside of their sit-in area, and as soon as they left the protected sit-in area that is guarded by defected soldiers, they came under attack. They came under attack from snipers, they came under attack by security forces who opened fire on them, at least some of whom were using high-caliber machine guns and heavy weaponry. Well, the attack on the protesters then ignited further war between Yemen's divided military. The interesting thing about the conflict on Sunday and now today on Monday is that it came at a time when there were negotiations going on between leaders from the opposition and leaders from the ruling party to possibly sign a transfer of power deal. And what there's speculation about is that perhaps the violence was intentional to sort of derail that political agreement from either side.
And world leaders convene in New York as the United Nations General Assembly opens its annual meeting.
The first 2 days of the annual gathering of world leaders is usually kind of a soft opening to the general debate. And in these couple days, they're talking about some broad issues like a global effort to fight non-communicable diseases. But most of the activity is sort of frenetically going on behind closed doors, is focused on the question of the Palestinians asking for membership in the United Nations. This Friday, President Mahmoud Abbas is supposed to make a speech to the General Assembly and then present a formal request to the Security Council. President Abbas arrived last night. This morning he had his first meeting with Ban Ki-moon, during which he announced his intention to go ahead with a request to the Security Council. That, of course, has the United States, the European Union, Russia, and the United Nations, who are trying to come up with a sort of negotiating plan for the Palestinians. They are all scrambling to try and make sure that that comes together before Friday. The Middle East has long been a focus of the United Nations in its 66-year history. The fight between the Israeli Palestinians goes back to them. And this year, again, it's giving some sense of excitement to the General Assembly because it's the first time in many years that it's had a focus, even if it's an old focus.